Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Ron Roberts, who's the founder and CEO of Roberts Retirement Group, and we'll be talking about tax planning for retirement. Ron, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Well, I think we could probably spend about 2 weeks talking about taxes and tax planning, and this is such a vast topic. So I'm excited to hear about how you advise your clients on this really relevant, important topic. Where do you start the conversation when you're beginning to factor in to your retirement planning how taxes are going to impact?
Yeah, so we talk about their existing plan. So say they've been participating in a 401k, been participating in an IRA account, and explaining that the funding was pre-tax dollars that went into these plans. And then eventually when you do withdraw the money out of these plans, you have to pay taxes as ordinary income. And so today, if you were born before 1960, they call it your required minimum distribution. For years, it was 70 and a half. So the year that you turn 70 and a half, you must take at least a required minimum distribution. So there's a calculation, and it's roughly less than 4% that you are required to withdraw. So if you're born after 1960, if you're born 1960, it's age 73. So the year you turn 73, you're required to take out a minimum, but that is fully taxable. And if you're born after 1960, it's now age 75 that the required minimum distribution starts. So when that's explained, then we talk about their retirement plans. If they're going to retire before 73, yes, you can withdraw money because you're over 59 and a half. Because before 59 and a half, there is a penalty. It's a 10% penalty if you draw your money before 59 and a half. But now you're over 59 and a half, you can withdraw out of your existing 401k IRA account. And it is going to be taxed as ordinary income. If you don't need the income, you're able to defer it until age 73 or 75. There you must at least take a minimum out each year and it's fully taxed. So the question I bring to them is, this nation goes to what they call tax reforms. Our last tax reform was in 2017. It will end January 1st, 2026. So that means Congress, with the approval of the president, they're going to come out with a new tax reform. And again, we don't know what those numbers are yet. But as you and I know, we have a large debt. We have to fund plans like Social Security and Medicare, and there's other government plans that we have to fund. And so we all think, based on all these factors, our taxes will be going up. So currently, the government does control your future. The government does control your tax brackets, how much you're going to pay taxes on those accounts. And we all think, yes, our taxes will be going up. So when that does happen, I will have less to live on and more to give to the government. So that's the current plan that we have right now with your retirement.
You know, you mentioned the deficit, and I know that there's websites that show the ticker of how fast it grows every second, and it's just big. And the only way to tame it is to cut government spending, which we know won't ever happen, or to raise taxes. So probably if people were to ask, do you feel taxes will go up in the next 5 to 10 years? Most people would say probably yes. And we do know that there's some tax help and things like that might sunset or not or get extended. There's just a big unknown. So some of those tax laws really impact retirement savings, like punching a hole in the bucket. What are some of the tax changes that might be looming in the future that could help or hurt, in the plan that we need to be aware of in putting the plan together?
Yeah, there has been a gift that's been given to us by the government, and that gift is called a Roth IRA. The Roth IRAs has been in place since 1997. How the funding goes with a Roth is quite the opposite when you would fund a 401k or an IRA. In an IRA 401k, you're doing pre-tax contributions. That means you haven't paid the tax yet. And so that account will continue to grow at a deferred rate. And then at the end, when you are taking out distributions, you're going to be fully taxed. Now, the question or what I hear often is what we should be at a lower tax rate when we retire, meaning that we'll probably live on 60-70% of our income, which we were making. Now we're going to live on less income. Makes sense. I'll be at a lower tax bracket, meaning I'll pay less taxes on my distributions out of my retirement. But what I've been finding out, it's not the case. A lot of retirees are still paying the same amount of taxes they were while they're working. And so what we explain with them is the government allows you to do a conversion. You currently have these pre-tax dollars funding these IRAs, these 401ks, but you are allowed to convert it into a Roth. Now, a Roth is after-tax dollars. That means you fund a Roth, you pay the tax up front, but you only pay it one time. But after that tax is paid once, that account will grow tax-free and your distributions will be tax-free. It kind of reminds me, I come from a farm background, and when you say you're going to plant a field of corn, and you have that kernel of corn you're going to plant into the ground, and then you're going to watch that corn grow to a stalk, and then that stalk's going to give you a 1 or 2 ears of corn. So reason I use that as an example is an IRA is like you planted the seed in the ground, and then you have a harvest, and it's like you have 800 kernels in an ear of corn. And so the tax man comes over to your house and says, I've noticed that you have a harvest. We're going to tax the ear of corn, which has 800 kernels of corn. That is what we call an IRA. A Roth is quite the opposite. The tax man comes over and he says, I noticed you planted your seed in the ground, that one kernel. We'll tax that kernel once, but when that comes a stalk and becomes an ear of corn, that is tax-free. So I let people know, do you want to pay taxes on a ear of corn, or do you want to pay a tax on a kernel of corn? And everybody said, of course, I want to pay tax on a kernel of corn because it's a smaller amount of money. So it's the same thing. When you make a contribution into a Roth, you pay your taxes just that one time, that kernel, and then that money can grow and grow and grow in the future, and it's completely tax-free. So with a conversion, we haven't paid the tax yet. And we're allowed, when we do a conversion, we don't have to pay taxes all in one tax year. We can do over multiple tax years. So it will pinch, but it won't hurt when we pay our taxes. So we control the taxes. One of the things we look at is your existing tax bracket. We look at your existing income. We have clients who may still be working now. We may say, but let's delay your conversion until, say, next year when you do retire, and then we may want to convert it next year. Or we may say, let's look at your income now, and this is where you're at. This is your bracket. And we may say, if you want to maintain that same bracket, this is how much we can convert this year. Or if we look at the next bracket and say, well, if we go to the next bracket, we can be a little more aggressive in our conversions. And that way we can convert it in a shorter period of time. So people may agree, maybe want to maintain our bracket or maybe go to the next bracket. We may do it over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And so over time, their 401k traditional IRA will now be all in what we call a Roth IRA. And then when they're ready to take income out of that Roth IRA, again, there's no required minimum distributions for a Roth because the taxes have been paid on it. But when you do take money out of it, it's called non-reportable income. That's the magic of a Roth. And so you are totally exempted from future government taxes. So when the government decides to increase taxes on us, your Roth is completely exempted from this. And that just gives people reassurance that the government no longer controls my retirement future, doesn't control my future taxes, because I already paid the tax. I did it based on today. It's done. I have a plan in place where I will have now tax-free income for the rest of my life.
I think we've talked about time before. You can't get time back. It's the most precious commodity. And we need to make sure you have your retirement plan in place well ahead of retirement to give time for it to perform the way it needs to perform. Talk a little bit about the time ahead of retirement that you should consider potentially a Roth conversion with this respect. This is where my mind is going. Okay, if I do the conversions in stages to maximize the tax hit like you were describing, and there's no way that anyone can do that on their own, get with a professional. But now once that money's in a Roth, now all of the growth is tax-free. Well, you don't want it to grow for a week and then now I need it because there's not enough time to grow. So how much time should you allow for then that money to be in the Roth to grow to then have that tax-free growth?
Yeah, again, those are going to be the questions I'm going to be asking. Because the answers can be different for different people. So the question is okay, when do you need income?
Yeah.
If they give me a time frame, I can work with that. Or if they say I don't need the income, that tells me we have time to do conversions. So I think that it's the answers to my questions in conversion. Now some people I may say, based on what you're answering my questions, doesn't make sense to do conversions, or they may be at a very low tax rate. They may be down in a 12% bracket. They may be down in a 10% bracket. They may be not paying taxes. And then we figure out, okay, this is what we can take out of your IRA and still not pay taxes. So again, it's everybody's different on different circumstances. So it's the questions I ask, if it makes sense to convert or it doesn't make sense to convert, or when the timeline is when they need income down the road in the future. So those are the kind of things I had to find out, and when we do a personal interview.
Yeah, the right question just enlightens and opens up opportunities. I think that is really, really a great approach. You mentioned the required minimum distributions, and then just now you said part of your questioning is if they don't need the funds, then we can do a different strategy. Well, what happens if someone is required to take out their minimum distribution and goes, I don't really need it this year because I sold my RV and I have some cash, so I'm just not going to take it out? Isn't that a problem with penalties?
Yeah, the government is pretty strict about these rules. So say you're over 73 and you're required to distribute at least a minimum. You can take more, but you have to take a minimum. And say you go, I really don't need income this year. I'm gonna stop taking. I'm gonna not take a withdrawal at all this year. There's a penalty, and it's pretty steep. It's 50%, and the penalty is 50% of what your R&D is, and so the penalty's steep. So again, you have to follow the rules, and so Again, the answer to the question is yes, I have to take the withdrawals no matter what. If I leave it as a 401k and IRA, I must take at least a required minimum distribution every year.
Yeah. When we think about the concept of taxes and in retirement, it's not something that everyone is an expert in. So that's why they come to people like you. And even you probably have someone on your team or work with the client's tax expert, because some of these points that you're bringing up might necessitate a CPA coming in and going, okay, here's what would necessitate us to do this strategy, or here's what would happen if we do it that way. Talk a little bit about the team and making sure that the tax strategies are put into place with the right people.
Yeah, so it's vital when you're doing this that you have a tax expert, and so the client may have a tax expert on that files their tax returns, is qualified. It could be a CPA. I just did one just a few days ago where we worked with his CPA, and we did a conversion, and we're doing over a 5-year period. They felt that would be the most ideal situation, and we did the tax withholdings and did all the right things that had to be done. Or if the person doesn't have a CPA expert, then we have one, and we have one on our team, and they have the ability to have a conversation with our CPA, going over their tax returns, going out their future income, and making a plan in place, and knowing how much we're going to withhold for conversion's sake, and how we can get that recovered by future growth, and the makeup what we paid in taxes. So yeah, it's vital to have a team member that is a tax expert when you do these conversions.
Yep. I think that a lot of times people don't realize the extent that taxes impact. Meaning, if they have a pension, their pensions could be taxed. How are Social Security taxed? It could be taxed at this level, that level. If you make a certain amount of money, so talk a little bit about how things like Social Security could be taxed.
Yeah. So the current laws are based on if you make income is over 32,000. This is for married couples. If you make over 32,000 and under 44,000 income, then 50% of your Social Security is taxed. If you make over $44,000 of income, it's 85% of your income of your Social Security is taxed. And so the impact is when we do conversions, it's a plan that we set up in place that's going to be a gradual conversion over time. And then once it's converted, and now we can start taking future income out of that Roth, that income is non-reportable income. Since there's non-reportable income, no 1099 income, since there's no income because their only source of income was this Roth and their Social Security, now their Social Security will be tax-free because there's no income reported from their Roth distributions. So they're going, oh my goodness, now I have tax-free income come out of my Roth, and now my Social Security is non-taxable because I have no income that's been reported. So now my Social Security income is now tax-free. So I have a number of clients on that plan, and boy, they're over the moon about it. And knowing that they won't have to file another 1040, but there's a lot of people don't know about this. Now, if we have a client who has a pension, then we can't get around that because a pension is there and it's always reported as income. But if we have a client that does not have a pension, their only source of income is that 401k that we convert into a Roth, we can make that tax-free income, and now they have tax-free retirement for the balance of their lives. I have a lot of people come up to me and say, Ron, why doesn't everybody do this? There's a couple of reasons. They did a study that they said that not more than 5% of those folks who have a 401k or IRA will ever convert to a Roth. And they said there's two reasons. One is just pure ignorance. They don't know how to do it or way to do it. And the second reason is they have an advisor that's not instructing them to do a conversion. But in our plan, if it's the right fit, it's the right thing to do, we do a Roth conversion.
That's again, I know we've mentioned this in our conversations before, but there's never one plan for every person. It all depends on what you need. It all depends on your circumstances, but these types of things could be a great opportunity to minimize and mitigate taxes. Now, let's be fair. You can never eliminate. I'm confident that there's never a way to just completely eliminate taxes, but we can lessen them or mitigate them or plan for taxes. So many of these points that you're bringing up are just so important. And I really appreciate you enlightening us on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mike.
So if someone is interested in learning a little bit more about how maybe to mitigate their taxes in retirement, what's the best way they can learn more and then also reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, they can reach us by our email address, which is Roberts, ROBERTS at Roberts, again, ROBERTS retirement.com, or they can reach us on our website, which is robertsretirement.com, or they can call us at 209-223-7870.
Great, Ron. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you today.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure as well. Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.